But there are so many Filipinos in the crowd tonight, so many flags. Thank you!
Philippine flags draped over the railings the way nations drape them during World Cup matches. Homemade signs reading Ealamania and Mahal Kita pressed against the barriers. And 10,000 voices roaring inside Sobeys Stadium made it clear this was not the sound of a standard tennis match. Traditional tennis etiquette mandates quiet during points, but the crowd generated continuous noise throughout the arena. Alex Eala, a 21-year-old player from Manila, stood still on center court in Toronto after her Wednesday night win on August 5, 2026. She let the noise wash over her before stepping to the microphone and addressing the crowd directly in Tagalog.
Thank you, everybody who is here tonight. Thank you to everyone who's supporting tennis.
Canadian Open Tournament director Carl Hale,
and boom, it was sold out on Wednesday night just like that.
who has been in his role for 20 years, stated on the record, "I've been doing this 20 years. I've never seen such an incredible crowd." He also referred to Eala as an absolute blessing to the sport. If you are one of the fans who watched this player before Toronto, before Washington, D.C., and before mainstream sports media routinely tracked her progress, this channel is your table. Subscribe and stand with the fans who saw this coming. The journey to this specific moment in Toronto began long before the first serve was struck on center court. Alex Eala arrived in Toronto barely 48 hours after lifting her first career WTA Tour title at the DC Open, where she defeated Jessica Pegula in the final and climbed to world number 20. Nearly 1 in 3 Filipino Canadians live in the Greater Toronto area, making the city a primary demographic hub for the diaspora. Historically, tennis scheduling algorithms and tournament organizers struggled to measure this demographic demand. For years, major tournament organizers failed to recognize the actual market draw of Filipino tennis fans. At the Australian Open in January 2026, schedulers placed Eala's match against Alycia Parks on a small side court with 2,800 seats during an afternoon slot. Filipino fans filled the space, cheering continuously even on lost points. Earlier that year at the Doha Open, Eala exited in the first round, yet ticket turnouts and crowd attendance patterns prompted tournament officials from other events to take note. The tennis establishment routinely assigned her to secondary courts, treating a nation of 110 million people as if they were a rounding error. Toronto marked the first time a tournament adjusted its master schedule to fit her audience. Organizers placed her on center court, featuring 10,000 seats, during a Wednesday night second-round match slot that historically yields lower secondary market values. Tickets for that session sold out in 30 minutes. When those 10,000 spectators entered Sobeys Stadium, they transformed the venue's concourse and stands into a cultural showcase. Philippine flags appeared at every entry gate and section. One fan attended the match wearing a blue dinosaur costume draped in the Philippine flag, dancing during every changeover. A commercial food vendor inside the stadium independently pulled chicken teriyaki off its menu and replaced it with a Filipino chicken adobo rice bowl to accommodate the crowd without formal instruction from the WTA or tournament management. The crowd maintained a chant of "Let's go, Alex, let's go," followed by 2 rhythmic claps across service games, changeovers, and point resets. The in-stadium announcer was drowned out when Eala walked onto the court. On the other side of the net stood Alycia Parks, the American player who had defeated Eala 7 months earlier in Melbourne on an outer court. The rematch ended in a 6-1, 4-6, 6-2 victory for Eala in 1 hour and 51 minutes, converting 5 of 14 break points. After Parks secured the second set, Eala broke service in the 5th game of the third set to consolidate her lead. Carl Hale watched from the director's box, publicly nodding that he had never witnessed an arena environment operating at that volume or passion level during his 2 decades managing the Canadian event. For fans who followed her 2025 Miami Open run, when observers were still learning to pronounce her name, the Toronto atmosphere validated long-term projections. On Thursday, Eala partnered with Venus Williams in doubles. Venus Williams brings 7 Grand Slam singles titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, and 14 Grand Slam doubles titles alongside her sister Serena Williams, while competing at 46 years old. During their joint press conference on August 6, 2026, Williams stated, "Alex is a world star." She added that Eala is incredible and an impressive young lady, praising her tactical mind and spatial awareness. Coming from a former world #1, the designation outlined Eala's trajectory beyond her immediate ranking. Despite the home court support, Eala and Williams lost their doubles match 6-4, 6-3 to Desiree Kroksic and Lyudmila Kichenok. Eala took accountability at the post-match press conference, thanking the crowd that stayed late into the night. Less than 24 hours later on Friday, Eala returned to center court for her third-round singles match against Caty McNally. Eala defeated McNally 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 in 2 hours and 39 minutes, recording a 7-match winning streak across Washington, D.C., and Toronto, while securing a round of 16 spot at a WTA 1000 event. The noise level inside the third set exceeded the metrics set during her earlier match against Parks. The commercial impact of Eala's draw has extended across the tour's media footprint. Jessica Pegula, who lost the D.C. Open final to Eala, publicly acknowledged that her podcast saw a measurable wave of new video traffic driven by Filipino sports fans discovering the channel through Eala. In a separate Toronto press conference, Coco Gauff noted, "It is great that one player can bridge the gap between a sport and a nation that had never had that representation before." The economic momentum shifted drastically the moment Eala was eventually eliminated later in the tournament draw. Prior to her departure, secondary ticketing platforms saw historic price spikes for remaining sessions, with fans actively purchasing upper and lower bowl seating to ensure access to her matches. However, the moment her loss was finalized, the secondary ticket market in Toronto experienced an immediate and unprecedented drop. Resale values for upcoming center court sessions collapsed as demand recalibrated, directly proving that thousands of attendees were buying tickets exclusively to watch Alex Eala rather than the general tournament lineup. The round of 16 in Toronto precedes the tour's transition to Cincinnati, followed by the U.S. Open at Flushing Meadows in Queens, New York. Queens houses one of the largest concentrations of Filipino Americans in the United States. With Toronto selling out a Wednesday night session in 30 minutes, secondary market analysts' projection models indicate high ticket demand for her open round sessions in New York. Across a single 7-day period, Alex Eala secured her first WTA singles title, entered the world top 20, sold out a 10,000-seat WTA 1000 stadium in 30 minutes, and established a dominant home court dynamic for the Philippines on international soil. The sudden demand shift caused secondary resale ticket prices to experience massive volatility the second her match outcomes were determined. Will Alex Eala lift the WTA 1000 trophy in Toronto, or will the physical pressure of her match workload catch up to her? How far do you project her to progress at the U.S. Open in Queens? Leave your specific match predictions and tournament round forecasts in the comments below, and subscribe to stay updated on full tournament coverage. The sudden financial shift in the secondary ticket market exposed a structural reality that tennis executives are now forced to calculate. For decades, ticket pricing models relied heavily on traditional tournament seating, where late-stage quarterfinals and semifinals held the highest premium. However, the 2026 Canadian Open proved that cultural identity and community mobilization can completely override traditional seating metrics. When Alex Eala competed, secondary seat values spiked by double-digit percentages within minutes of schedule confirmations. When her tournament run concluded, prices dropped immediately on major resale exchanges, leaving hundreds of listed seats unsold for subsequent rounds. This market contraction signaled a clear message to venue planners and broadcast networks across the world. The audience was not paying simply to watch a WTA 1000 event. They were paying exclusively to watch Alex Eala represent their flag on court. This economic dynamic is already reshaping preparations for upcoming stops on the North American hardcourt swing. Tournament directors in Cincinnati and organizers at the U.S. Open in Queens are adjusting court allocations, ticket distribution, and security operations to accommodate expected crowd sizes. With Queens holding one of the highest concentrations of Filipino Americans in the country, ticket brokers are already forecasting record demand for early round sessions at Flushing Meadows. The shift seen in Toronto is no longer viewed as an isolated surge or a temporary novelty. It represents a fundamental evolution in how international tennis fan bases assemble, support, and economically impact live sports. As the tour moves forward, tournament organizers can no longer treat international player followings as an afterthought. The numbers from Sobeys Stadium have established a permanent benchmark, proving that Alex Eala carries an entire global market with her wherever she steps onto the court.